Before we start the video, guys, I want you to listen to this. Imagine it's 11:30 p.m. It's at night, it's dark, and then everything starts to shake and you hear this. Listen. This is the tsunami warning. This is what you hear and you don't know what to expect. How high will it be? What is coming? It's absolutely scary, guys. This is what people in Japan just faced a few hours ago. And earthquakes, large earthquakes in the darkness, that is always the most scary part because they were called to evacuate, to seek higher ground in the darkness.
Tsunami advisory 発表日時2025年月曜日23時23分各地域の情報
Huge earthquake just hit Japan. 7.8, 7.6, the numbers still keep changing. Off the northern coast of Japan, late Monday, Japanese time, a tsunami was coming, guys. They issued a tsunami warning and a tsunami was happening about half a meter in height. That is half a person, guys. This is really, really big.
This earthquake was very, very powerful. It measured 7.6 in magnitude. And I live in Tokyo, and even I felt it. I was actually just getting ready for bed. I was in my pajamas when this earthquake hit, and my entire apartment began to shake. So you can just imagine how powerful and how frightening this earthquake was for residents who live in the northern parts of the country.
And it hit several coastal communities in the country's northeast. We know already that 23 people are injured, one seriously, unfortunately. And right now, thankfully, the Japanese government has downgraded the tsunami warning. But I have to tell you, chaotic, frightening scenes from Japan. One resident has described that when the quake struck, he said, "I've never experienced such a big shaking." He's a convenience store owner, and he has told this to the public broadcasters in Japan. Another vice principal of a high school in Japan says he was at home when it hit, and he says glasses and glass bowls falling and smashing on the floor. He said he drove to the school, which was designated as an evacuation center, and he says the roads were jammed with traffic and car accidents as panicked people tried to flee. The government had issued evacuation orders in Japan after this powerful earthquakes.
Now, the Japanese Prime Minister has said that the Japanese government is responding to this disaster. They will be putting their full efforts behind this and will be conducting any search and rescue missions if any are needed. They'll also assess any potential damage from this earthquake and the subsequent tsunamis. But so far, Wolf, even though a tsunami warning has been issued where we could see waves of up to 3 meters hitting Japan's coast, so far the tsunami waves haven't been that high yet, some measuring less than a meter, about half a meter.
And guys, before we continue what has happened in this earthquake, the most frightening part of this is what the Japanese government has issued. They have issued a warning, a mega quake advisory for the Hokkaido Sanriku megaquake. They warn that residents should stock up on food and water, prepare their homes, and stay ready to evacuate immediately over the next week because something bigger could happen. This could not even be the biggest one. And this advisory is in effect for 118 municipalities. So that means, although we have already seen, 7.8, 7.6, whatever the end and final number will be, this is already huge and we've already had it. But we could have something that could even be higher. And they're telling us that right now, the large earthquake activity in Japan is higher than usual. And of course, especially in coastal areas, this is crucial because if an earthquake happens there that is even larger, we could see even larger tsunamis. In Iwate, in the Kuji port, for example, they did have a 2.3 foot tsunami, that's 0.7 meters, 70 centimeters. 16-inch tsunami, 40 centimeters in height, was recorded in Aomori and in Hokkaido. And the epicenter of the earthquakes was roughly 44 miles, that's 70 kilometers, off the coast of Japan at a depth of roughly 33 miles. Several reports of fires that broke out as well. We all know Japan is very, very prepared for earthquakes, but they still have stuff happening, of course. We have power outages that have been reported. We have thankfully not have received bad news about the power plants in the area. This would be the country's Higashidori and the Onagawa nuclear power plant. Japanese authorities say we have received reports that other nuclear facilities are currently being checked, but no abnormalities at this time. Japan's new prime minister that has just been elected in October, she said her name is Sanae Takaichi. She said that her government would work closely with local officials to assess the damage and put in place emergency response measures. And they say the government would be acting as one under the principle of putting human life first. That makes sense, right? And guys, Japan is no stranger to large earthquakes. It lies on the Pacific Ring of Fire. I have just reported about the Ring of Fire and that it's unusually active right now. And Pacific Ring of Fire, intense seismic activity, volcanic activity on both sides of the Pacific Ocean. And the worst quake in recent Japanese history was, of course, the magnitude 9.1 Tohoku earthquake in 2011 that has triggered a major tsunami and a nuclear disaster. And that quake and tsunami has ended 22,000 people, and it has caused the reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant to melt down and has released radioactive contamination into the surrounding area. So thankfully, this has not happened again yet. I hope they have more precautionary measures right now. But let's talk about the warning. What could happen within the next week? Guys, already today there were these evacuation warnings for 90,000 people to seek higher ground. So what do they have to deal with within the next week? Because initially the Japanese Meteorological Agency said that they could experience today a tsunami as high as 10 feet, that's 3 meters. And on the Japanese scale, it's a 1 to 7 scale of seismic intensity. The tremor registered, they say it was an upper 6, so it must have been shaking quite intense. That was a quake, and that's what they're reporting. Strong enough to make it impossible to keep standing or move without crawling. So in such tremors, even the most heavy furniture can collapse, and wall tiles, window panes can be damaged in many buildings or fall down. Of course, they have suspended the East Japan Railway because of that. We've had that before. Now the authorities said there is a possibility that further powerful and even stronger earthquakes could occur over the next several days. So that's why, following this earthquake, they have issued an advisory for a wide region from the northernmost island of Hokkaido down to the Chiba prefecture, that's east of Tokyo, and calling on residents to be on alert for the possibility of a powerful earthquake hitting again within the next week. And guys, if we look at the statistic, Japan is one of the world's most earthquake-prone countries. An earthquake is occurring there at least every 5 minutes. Of course, not at that big scale, but the Ring of Fire and the volcanoes there are very, very active. We have oceanic trenches that are partly encircling the Pacific Basin. this Pacific Ring of Fire. And Japan alone accounts for 20% of the world's earthquakes with magnitude 6 or greater. So that is really massive. And just a few hours ago, we talked about Japan and whether that magnitude 7.0 that we had in Canada, Alaska, could be a foreshock. And I mentioned Japan because before we had the Tohoku earthquake with the magnitude 9.3, now we can draw lessons from that disaster because a magnitude 7 level earthquake had just struck 2 days earlier prior to the big one. So at the Pacific Ring of Fire, that is always possible. That's why the government has now issued this 1-week megaquake advisory for a significant earthquake in this region. We had that last year. We had a megaquake advisory that was issued in August last year for the Nankai Trough area in central southern Japan. Nankai Trough also high potential to produce a megathrust earthquake magnitude 9 or higher. So many areas in Japan are really, really dangerous. And we already know, based on the seismic data that we have, what kind of earthquake this was. It was a thrust fault quake. These happen when a locked section of rock suddenly gives way and the overlapping piece of rock jolts upwards. And that's a vertical motion, and that's the reason for these tsunamis. And it's a very big concern if something like this happened, because even a small lift off the seafloor can displace a lot of water. And it was at roughly 50 kilometers deep. That's not a shallow rupture, but it's still well within the range where the seafloor deformation can happen and can have a huge effect. This earthquake struck on the boundary where the Pacific Plate dives beneath the northern Honshu, That's Japan's largest island. And guys, where I am right now, British Columbia in Canada has a similar setup where the other end of the same Pacific Plate pushes underneath North America. I don't feel so great right now, I have to tell you. These subduction zones spend years, decades, centuries, in my case, storing stress before releasing it, and often in patches. And because the zone is made up of many locked and partially locked sections in Japan here, one rupture doesn't reset the whole system. And Japan records more than 100,000 earthquakes each year, mostly tiny ones. But because the tectonics here are so incredibly active and complex, something like this happens quite often. And now we've seen the big earthquakes circling in that northern part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. This year we had the magnitude 8.8 megathrust earthquake in Kamchatka, and now you go down to Japan, we've had a 7.8, 7.6 earthquake there. Then we just had Alaska 7.0. So is there more to come? Is there some stress transferring? Guys, I'm sitting at the Pacific Ring of Fire. I'm sitting in a high rise right now, very high up, because I have to work. And I don't feel so great. It should not transfer, but you know, this is the Pacific Plate that is encircled with these subduction zones. So let's be careful. Let's be on alert. I'll keep you updated about this earthquake, what will happen. I hope you liked it. Check out the videos in the end screen here about the Alaska earthquake and these crazy aftershocks or foreshocks. Check this out, guys. There's so much happening. So I hope I see you in a second. If you like that video, hype, like, share it with your friends. If you want to support the channel, check the link in the description. Thank you so much, guys. Stay safe, be prepared. See you in a second.